all. Welcome to the FIDIC, webinar on working in the new normal. I'm delighted to have so many panelists, with us this particular afternoon. Depending on where you are, if you are in United States, it'll be very much early in the morning. If you are in North America, you'll be more or less in early in the morning. And if you are from Australia, you'll be very, very early in the evening. But I'm delighted to have everybody here. I'm told that we are expecting close to 1,000 people who register. So hopefully if we get 500, that would be a good start. Let's give it a start, Barbara, and just sweep through the particular one. For some of you who've been following FIDIC, you would have known that we did run quite a number of conferences or webinar last year. And we staged a team webinar within the space of 10 weeks to try and address the challenges that face the world. The challenge is still with us. We're not out of it yet. COVID is here, but thank God we hear that vaccination system is coming through. But during that period, we had 15,000 people that registered and 9,000 attended, and we had close to 150 countries that participated in the program, which is pretty good. With close to 80 speakers, and since then, most of the people who are unable to attend the webinar, we've had 15,000 that's gone on online to actually follow the program. So we're delighted that we have good follow-up on some of the issues that we think are relevant to the industry. This year, we're doing 3-in-1 program. We're looking at our committees and making sure that what they are discussing is not retained within the committee, but actually share with the public and our members and the industry. So we have the committee webinar, which we've started. The next one is going to be 23rd of March. We also have our State of the World, report, which we produce. I believe the next one is scheduled for the 1st of April. And this is the third leg of the 3-in-1 program, which is to keep teasing out the challenges that we face as we come out of the COVID. I remember last year I was saying, coming out of COVID, but I think until the vaccination is completed, it's very difficult to say we're actually coming out of COVID. So what do we have? Next slide. I think, what I would like to do, while we've only got nearly 300 people online and other people are, but just to give us a teaser, I thought I'm going to put a question to the panelists. And the question is, when you look at the panelists, you see the point is in recent news suggests that companies will reduce their office and office space in the city center in the new normal. By how much in terms of percentage? Is it going to be, 0 to 10%? Is it 10 to 20, 20 to 30, and 30 to 40, or 40 to 50%? It'll be interesting to get the feedback of the audience. I know some of you are just barely coming up online, and so there'll be a couple of seconds to allow you to register your vote on that particular issue. I've had so many people saying we don't need office anymore. We can all work from home. Some people will say, well, we've always worked, hot desking, so it doesn't make any difference. So it'd be interesting to get, feedback from that. Barbara, are we able to get feedback? Thank you. So we are looking roughly that between 20 to 30% will be a reduction. That is about, so we look roughly about 31% is looking into middle range. And we've got substantive between 30 to 40 and 40 to 50. If you add that together, that's close to roughly about 48% of people saying there will be a significant reduction in office space. That is actually quite interesting as a good starting point. I'm going to move on to the next point that I want to share with you now, which is really to basically let you know who the panelists are. I'm sure you've seen them. First, there will be Bill, our president. I'm going to invite him in a minute to say a few words. Then I'm also going to introduce Mike Hague, who is the executive chair of Mount McDonald. Then you have Stephen Brock, who is actually from California, from Trinidad Corporation. Then Pierre Vizet, who is Sistra chief executive from France. Robin Greenleaf, I'm glad you're able to join us, notwithstanding the storm in your part of the world. Mark Coates, I believe is based somewhere in Oxfordshire in UK, and Alan is also from Australia. So we have a very good combination of people to help us to debate the issue that we face. So on that note, I'm going to invite Bill Howard, our president, to say a few words. Bill, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much, Nelson. And I'd like to thank you and the Secretariat for once again putting on really great webinars of terrific subjects. And as you noted, we've got a tremendous amount of attendance at these webinars. In fact, over the last year, FIDIC has reached out to over 15,000 people, which is much more than we normally do. um, one of the impacts of a very, very difficult and challenging year. I'd also like to thank the six very diverse speakers that we have, diverse in all sorts of ways, size of firms, geography, etc. So I'm very much looking forward to hearing what they have to say on this very important subject of working in the new normal. Um, I think what we'll hear today, I would imagine, is pros and cons of a lot of different things, and none of us really know exactly what's going to happen in the future. But I think all of us would agree that working is going to be different in some ways um, after the pandemic. I, for one, think there's a lot of opportunity to improve quality and reduce cost at the same time from some of the things that we've learned in the last year. Working remotely, using IT tools, machine learning, all of that kind of thing has been going on for a while, but in the pandemic, we really were forced to work that way at an accelerated rate. And I think we've learned a lot. Uh, and there is real opportunity there to reduce costs, which we all realize, I think, is very, very significant considering the infrastructure needs that we have, which we're talking about in our state of the world. So I think a lot of opportunities. The other thing that I'd mention quickly is in the State of the World reports that we've been working on, we've noticed that there's a projection that in the future, over 2/3 of the global population will live in cities. And I, for one, am wondering if the pandemic is going to change some of that. That last question that Nelson just put up is an indicator of something. If office space in cities is going to reduce by 20 or 30%, and people are used to working very effectively without commuting, um, will that impact the other forces that are driving people towards the urban environment? I think it's an interesting question, which we don't have the answer to, but it's something that as engineers and planners we'll have to be looking at in the future. So that's one of the ones that comes to my mind whenever I'm thinking about this subject. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to you, Nelson, and I'm certainly anxious to hear our experts talking about working in the new normal. And I once again thank them for some of them getting up very early to help us. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Bill, for that kind introduction and setting us on that journey. I think the word that I want to share with working in the new normal, opportunity or a threat. My take on it is that COVID-19 has shown us that there are different ways of doing things, and we can still achieve our objective. Before I go through the statistics, what I will share with you, we've had Bill mentioning that people travel less, they work more from home, they use technology more savvily, and they can actually increase productivity. We've heard the issue about there may be a change in the professional landscape and engineering industry in terms of how that industry is structured, because maybe less people want to work in the city. The client need may change. Do we need the same length of road? Do we need the same more of train system? There's all sorts of questions being asked, and people are even saying this may lead to the fourth industrial revolution, that our industry structure will change. And we've seen Amazon taking over some of retail market. What does that mean for our industry? Is it going to be a big impact, or is it an opportunity for us to actually reflect on the situation and ask ourselves and say, can we do things better? Our contract, can we work out how we work together in a more collaborative manner? And do we actually have a challenge of how do we bring people into our sector? These are the big questions that we're yet to answer. But I'm really delighted that I've got, massive, people with a lot of experience to share with us, as, Bill talked about it. We've got people from a very large company, from a small company, from specialists, from technologies, and also on system and integration, which is quite interesting. And so from that point of view, without spending too much time on it, we hope to spend 1.5 hours with you in all this issue. But when you look through the feedback that we've got from the statistic on the construction industry, it tells me that the construction industry is going through some challenges, but yet the bulk of the construction activity continue during the COVID-19. Next slide, please. The other point that we also hear is that when we look back into what we did last year, there was a lot of feedback, there is a new normal in working practice, things will never go back the same. There was the issue about the impact of the COVID will invest in 1.22 billion, $1 trillion. There is the issue about staff well-being. Are we looking after our staff? Are we going to survive the whole issue? There are issues to do with implication on contracts. I heard last year when one of our speakers at the conference talked about nearly 10 billion of contracts was let on HS2, which was without physical meeting of those who are supplying. Everything was online. There is the issue about communication with staff, with clients. There is issue about investment profile. Is the investment profile going to change? There are issues to do with short time and even medium long term issue. And there was the issue about collaboration. How do we work together? A better system. But the other point that came through was the quick feedback to say no company, big or small, is immune from the technological change that is now going to occur. Next slide. What I also pick up is when you look at the landscape of our industry and you look at infrastructure questions being asked, are we going to move into a new world where it's not blue but green? Is the world going to become smaller or bigger? We have some countries who are putting up barrier. How will building needs be adapted to deal with COVID or future pandemic? Question being asked. Will personal form of transportation such as cars become more important because people don't trust public transport? These are the questions being asked. We will need more infrastructure if there is air capacity with shipping and everything changing. And the question goes on, how do we deal with the pandemic in 2-3 years time? And these are the questions that is actually going through the whole of infrastructure sector. The next slide, please. One of the points that's being raised is that what is the big iceberg that is coming through? Is it about new social contract behavior? Is digitization and business model going to be impacted? The democracy in geopolitical investment? Is the trade industry barrier will be on? Are there going to be a new change? Bill talked about how city is going to be structured. Mobility, real estate, logistic, all these are big issues. The health and safety and the vaccination are more important. The sustainability development goal. All of these things are issues that is going to challenge our mind. So at this point, I'm going to call the expert and invite them to say a quick introduction to their company. And also then I'll put a couple of questions to them and then we can debate the subject. So Mike Hague, you can be the first to take the floor. Mike, a quick introduction about your company and very quickly, and I'll go a couple of questions for you. Mike, the floor is yours. Can you unmute? Mike, are you still?
Leave. I'm the first speaker, and I'm the first one to
Yes,
forget to unmute. So I'm Mike Hague. I'm the Chief Executive of Mott MacDonald. Mott MacDonald, as many of you know, we're engineering, management development consultants operating around the world, particularly in the transport, water, buildings, energy sectors. And I think the subjects that we're going to be debating today are very close to our heart and certainly my heart.
Thanks very much, Mike. The question I'm going to put across to you, I do know Mott very well. You are everywhere. You got footprint all over the world, and you are probably in a better position to tell me how different parts of the world of your business has responded. The question I was going to ask you, has the consultancy and engineering sector adopted to the new norm? Have we adapted into the new norm? And is this new norm going to be progressive after the vaccination, or do we see a potential path where we're looking at a new industry structure? In another word, does the current structure we have fit for the future if we have any other pandemic? So Mike, the floor is yours.
Yeah, no, a few thoughts. I mean, I do think that maybe there are kind of two sides to that question. There's the first bit, which is how do we operate? The new norm in terms of how we operate, and then the new norm in terms of the landscape that we operate in. So I think they're quite different things. When it comes to how we operate, I'm not sure that the new norm is a word that I kind of easily recognise. I think that we've seen a massive amount of disruption over the last 12 months. Various levels of disruption in different places, of course, much worse in some places than others. But everywhere, working patterns have changed. We've demonstrated that we can be much more agile in the way that we operate, whether it's as designers or indeed as constructors. We've learned that we are quite agile. It's you have to say, thank goodness that if you're going to have a pandemic, it didn't happen 10 years ago. Certainly in our industry, I think it would have been a lot harder to have that agility. So there's a lesson there that actually investing in the future, you're never quite sure what's round the corner. but that investment is important. I think in terms of how we operate as consultants, I do believe that we are fundamentally a team-based industry. We work together, we solve problems by actually, not just having formal meetings, but we throw ideas around. Often the best ideas, the best solutions come from those ad hoc kind of meetings. So I do believe that we will, at least for the foreseeable future, we will continue to be an office-based kind of industry. Having said that, we will become much more agile. We'll be much more flexible. The thought of actually spending, 52 weeks of the year, 5 days a week in an office, I mean, that's going to change. We are going to be much more agile, but we're not going to move away from offices. I think we're still going to have that office environment. There's the well-being aspect. I mean, we've definitely seen the first 6 months of this pandemic where people were in places where people were largely working from home. Productivity was okay. We continued relatively productively, but how sustainable was that? People's well-being was started to be affected. People needed a change of scene. People actually needed to be with colleagues. Younger, early career professionals actually need interface with their seniors for skills development and so on. So I do think that the new normal, I think, in terms of offices will not be as extreme as maybe some might have thought. I think the big thing about this pandemic is that it's taught us, apart from the agility thing and flexibility, the pace of change. I think as an industry, I hope we've taken on board that we can all move much quicker than we thought. You look at what we've been able to do in the world of science with vaccines. You look at things like in the UK, the construction of the Nightingale hospitals that we were very much involved with. We've been able to do things that people said were not possible to be done. So we have to remember that pace of change, which really then brings us on, for me, to the landscape in which we operate. What will be the new norm in terms of that landscape? Well, that landscape will change. Of that, I've got no question whatsoever. Everyone talks about pandemics as being great accelerators of key themes. Well, there are some things, and maybe we'll talk about these a bit later, but if you just think of things like the decarbonisation of infrastructure, that is going to be a new norm. And is our industry fit in terms of its structure to deliver on decarbonisation? I think the answer is no. I think there's lots we can do, and we have lots of technology, we've got lots of knowledge. We can solve many of those problems with today's technology, but do we have the structure as an industry in order to do that? I'm not sure that we have. Can we bring together all of the digital skills and knowledge that we need from the whole sort of ecosystem of digital knowledge that we have in order to develop the sort of green solutions that we'll be looking for? I'm not sure that we have. And I think, when it comes to delivering, really truly delivering in terms of build back better, build back greener, I was talking to a client recently who talked about, we can't do that with the current transactional interfaces that we've got. As long as we think of ourselves as being, yes, one industry, but an owner, an operator, a funder, a designer, a constructor, as long as we're all separate in our separate silos, can we really deliver on what this new norm might be? So that's probably enough. I could talk for a long time now.
No, I know, Mark, you can go on, because you've actually stepped in the other question, which I think you've actually moved into the next question, which I was going to ask you. And I'm glad that you did so. I mean, do you think in your mind, just looking back at the footprint of MOT, which is a global entity? I mean, I have different ways of describing MOT, that giant that keep on moving and doing big things in different parts of the world, and quietly don't talk about it, but just get on with doing it. You've touched on key issue. I mean, we got COP26 coming through. We talk about net zero. We talk about issue about, build better, on all these concepts. Do you think, in the new world that we move in, you touch on the need and the relationship and the structure between, the client, the supply chain, the partnership. Do you think this, COVID-19 and the new normal that we're going to move will force us to look at things in a different angle and actually, both from the client side, because traditionally we tend to give, but the clients always say, this is what we need of you. Do you think this will change the landscape in the way we think so that we can address things in a quicker, smarter, and the client will be receptive towards it and address this issue about net zero if we're going to achieve in 2030, 2050? Do you think we're ready for it?
Are we ready for it? You know what, the interesting thing is that if you think about the global mega trends that we've got, so whether it's climate change, whether it's societal outcomes, social outcomes for society, whether it's the digital kind of transformation that we're all going through, all of these were happening anyway. But I think history has shown us that pandemics tend to be great accelerators. They accelerate attention. And I think that's what's happened. There's a lot more attention being given now to climate change, and through that, the whole journey towards net zero. I think the voice of our communities, there is no doubt that, and different countries around the world, this is manifesting itself in different ways, but politicians are listening to communities, and they're starting to realize that if you're spending billions of dollars on infrastructure, then don't just do it to create economic growth, to create jobs. Actually, do it to create greater, broader societal impact. So I think what's happening is that these voices have got louder. Politicians are listening to it. You hear different words used around the globe, but the Build Back Better, Build Back Greener kind of debate. So I think we are on the cusp of a new normal in this area. Many countries around the world have now signed up to the Paris Agreement, have made commitments around net zero. So just picking that one thing of net zero. So if our governments are going to really deliver on their commitments around net zero, our industry has to move fast, because in the infrastructure world, we are a great emitter of greenhouse gases, but equally, partly because of that, we're part of the solution here towards moving towards net zero. Having said that, we've got a pipeline of infrastructure projects around the world that have the ability to either deliver on this decarbonisation agenda or not. And for me, that's where COP26 becomes really interesting, because could COP26 be a bit of a tipping point where we move? There are more voices now, but some of it is rhetoric. Can that be turned into a real kind of pathway to action at COP26? I think that, as I said before, around carbon, we have so many skills already that we can bring to bear in the industry. We do understand how to decarbonize infrastructure. So I think we have an opportunity, I think, now. And COVID-19, awful though it's been, I would like to think that one of its legacies can be that the voice around decarbonizing infrastructure, around creating better community, better social outcomes from the infrastructure that we build, will be part of that legacy.
Thank you very much, Mike. You take us into the next point, because you've actually moved on now, and I'm going to actually skip and come back to you later, Mike, give you some breathing space. I'm going to go into Stephen Brooks, who is actually joining us from California. Stephen, I'm delighted that you're able to join us. Last time you and I met was in Mexico, and you gave us a very colorful presentation. And so I'm going to ask you to very briefly introduce your company, and then I've got a few questions I'll put across to you. Stephen, are you still with us?
Sure, I'm here. Yes, I'm the Chief Technology Officer of Teradata Corporation, and as the name implies, we're all about the data. So our goal is to help organizations use data to change the way that they work, and to people to use data to change the way that they live. And it's about analytics and decision-making with the data.
Stephen, thank you very much. I would just wish I have the opportunity to physically see you. You never know. There may be opportunity for me to get you back into Geneva in future. Now, the question I want to put across to you, I think, the word is about disruptor. We've seen how the industry and the market has responded over the last 18 months to the new technology, new way of doing Zoom, and see what is coming up with all sorts of things that we've been using. Without the Zoom, without the older system, we couldn't have maintained our communication. The question I'm putting across to you, is this a one-off, or have we seen the momentum building up and there is no U-turn? And if there is no U-turn, which is really, we have to look at the issue about data, the way the industry and technology is going on, is there any example of an industry that we ought to look up to as to what changes is happening in that sector, and we can learn from it? So Stevie, the floor is yours.
Sure. I get asked the question all the time, when will we get back to normal? And my answer to that is never, because the new normal is never normal. I mean, right now we're in the middle of a biological disruption. 10 years ago, we had a financial disruption. 10 years before that, we had a digital disruption. So these disruptions will continue to happen. And I view this as, okay, it's unpleasant, but it's also opportunity. You have to look at these things as glass half full. And there's a lot of industry research that shows that the shift of company fortunes, both good and bad, happen coming out of these kind of disruptions. There's some interesting work from Bain & Company that showed that there are 46% more rising stars coming out of a disruption, but there are also 89% more sinking ships coming out of a disruption. So what happens is disruptions help differentiate companies that do and do not have the capability to execute well and to strategize well. And interestingly, when we look at, what is the impact of a disruption, it's crisis management mode, it's, urgent reallocation of resources, people and skills and assets and capital and so on. And sometimes people will say, well, we need to make a plan so that we don't have to, be so reactive to these crises and so on. And I would argue that making a plan is absolutely the wrong thing to do, because you can't make a plan for the unpredictable, right? The unpredictable can't be predicted. That's why it's called unpredictable. And so, we need to, instead of making a plan, we need to instead be more agile. So to answer your question about, who are the survivors and who are not the survivors, look into the organization and look not who has the best plan, because the best plans will sink in these disruptive times. Plans are great when everything is going as you more or less expect it to go. But Stephen Hawking, one of my favorite mathematicians, scientists, talks about intelligence being the ability to adapt to change. So for your organization, you have to ask yourself, are you a brittle organization or a resilient organization? Brittle organizations are top-down command and control. Brittle organizations are highly optimized. Brittle organizations are designed to avoid failure. In contrast, resilient organizations, and these are the ones that I believe become the winners, they're self-organizing in their structure and their organization. Resilient organizations are highly adaptive. They're not highly optimized, they're highly adaptive. They embrace change. They're designed to learn from failure. They're not trying to avoid failure. So those, it's not really industry specific, it's really organization specific. Which organizations are prepared for these disruptions? And of course, some industries like transportation industry will be more highly disrupted. Those airlines that continue to wait for when are the passengers going to come back and start flying again, they did not do very well. Those airlines which pivoted from carrying passengers to carrying cargo, they did very, very well, right? And so how fast can you change, and what is the basis for that change, and how prepared are you to do that quickly?
Well, Stephen, thank you very much for that. I think what you're saying to us, it's different between being a dynamic or being a reactive organization. And if you're a dynamic one, means you take the opportunity and you react. The next question I was going to put across to you is about technology affordability. We've seen a lot of, technology be coming into play since the COVID is now here. And question get asked, does it get cheaper or does it get more expensive? Or is it one about responding to the need of your company and having the resources through the technology to help you to deliver what you talked about? You talk about below, and and the other one that you use. So where does technology fit into? Is it going to keep on going price wise, or do you see the price coming down?
So it's a tricky question. So what I would argue is that the per unit price goes down, but we will consume more of it. Who in this workshop didn't invest in upgrading their internet bandwidth and connectivity and so on? We all did, right? We had to do. And we're using it more. We're paying more for it. So the cost of technology goes up, but the per unit price is coming down. And that will continue to accelerate. Organizations will shift from on-premises to cloud deployment of the technology. There'll be less investment in capital expense and more investment in operational expense. So there'll be a CapEx to OpEx shift in the technology spend. Operationally, things will become more efficient, right? We'll use technology to become more efficient. You know, we had the digital disruption 20 years ago, as people would sort of name that era. But I would argue that this pandemic caused a digital transformation stress test, right? We've been talking about digital transformation for decades. Now you had to do it, no choice. You know, so, you know, CEOs would ask, are you ready? Doesn't matter if you're ready, it's coming whether you're ready or not. So you better make the investment, you better make the change.
Well, it seems to me that I'm going to come back to you, with that question, Stephen, because what you're saying is it's not a matter of is it going up or down, is how do you shift your business and use technology to suit your needs, which is actually quite interesting. And you posed a very good question there, which I myself will have to address in the sense that we've gone cloud. Yes, we are using the system more, but then you could turn around to say maybe our other cost has gone down. Do we need the office? Do we need to travel to the office? So it's a compensation issue. So I'm going to go across, to Pierre Verzat, who is the chief executive of Sistra based in Paris, but with a global footprint. So Pierre, would you introduce your company? And then I've got a couple of questions to you. Pierre, are you still with us?
Yes, I am with you. Can you hear me? It's okay?
Thank you very much. I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, so hello everybody. So I can introduce my company. We are a 60-year-old company operating worldwide. We are a global leader for mass transit and rail engineering, based mainly in France, UK, Brazil, Middle East, and North America. We have 7,600 employees with a turnover of around 700 million euros.
So thank you very much, Pierre. Your business is very much transport focused. And the question I was going to put across is about really true system integration. We've had a major shift in the way the industry is going. And the question really that I want to put across to you is that, do you feel that because of the COVID and because people have to work in different environments, that we've been able to get a better system integration in the way we operate between home base and offsite? Have we been very good in actually working truly in an integrated manner? Because earlier on, I heard you talking about collaboration with the company based in UK on the UK base, and I suspect you probably do the same thing all over the world. Do you think we're getting better as COVID forced us to be better integrated and more collaborative the way we work?
It's clear that the COVID crisis accelerated something which was already under progressing, and that is already one of our core value at Sistra, which is connected team. We know that we have to connect better people to be more efficient all around the world, and the COVID was the step forcing us to definitely connect because we cannot no more travel. Was it more efficient? There is yes and no. I follow the opinion of Mike. We are by essence a team industry. We need to gather people, and at the end, we will need to maintain a certain level of being an office industry. But the fact that we have been forced to no more travel, and every year, me personally, I was traveling half of the year, but many of our employees were traveling to be expert in one project, then another one. It has been shut down, and it has been accepted by the clients. They said, we accept that you are now only connected by video, and it's really a game changer. So in terms of integration, it's helped us to better connect and use resources. And in our domain, transportation and especially rail, there is scarcity in resources. So the client will discover that they are gaining something, that there is more expert available to support their project. Okay, it's easier for the design phase when you are at the office. On the construction phase, We are talking about EPMC now. We are using better connected tools, but it's not the same level. But that's the next step for digitalization. Yes.
Yeah, thanks very much, Piers. The next question I was going to put across to you. We heard in the introduction that I think it was Bill that said it. You know, we've always had the issue that more and more people are going to live in the city, and there's be urbanization, and there's going to be development. And if that's going to be the case, then there is a need for to have infrastructure to be agile that can deal with the city. And now we have COVID, which perhaps reversed the process, and people are living back in the suburb. Do you think the client needs will change, or have you seen evidence of that changing? I heard Stephen Brock earlier saying, well, if you're a supplier, you used to carry people, but there's no people. What about carrying cargo? That's flexibility. So the question to you is, have you seen the client changing their needs in terms of infrastructure, saying, well, we don't need more of this sort of transportation, we need a different transportation, or are we the one prescribing? So Pierre, what's your take on that? Client needs.
Speaking for the rail business, which is a very the cycle investment cycle are very long, so they are not changing the direction so fast. That's the case in airport industry where it's a massive shutdown. But for the rail industry, the life is still supported by contract from the past world. So today we are not observing on the ground changes. Clients are slightly adapting their program for the coming years. In some countries, not at all. In Europe, not so much. In US, yes, they stop because they are lacking of revenue, but it's I think it's a stop and go. The more long-term trend is the fact that maybe the life will be quite different with less people concentrated in the same places, maybe more mobile, living remote, 200 kilometers, 300, taking a high-speed line or a train and then joining the office for 1 or 2 days only. So it's not exactly the same way of working, but this will be intensive in terms of transportation consumption. Because, okay, you are traveling less, but you are still traveling, so you need the link. And on top, you will more small link to connect small cities, because there is a trend also to push people from large city to smaller city in order to have a better quality of life. And it's affordable if you can work from home during half or more of your time. So this is generating new opportunities for developing new small connection or suburbs of suburbs, if I may say so. So it's changing the model a little bit, but the new life is still not the real for us.
You see a redistribution of people and places and activities,
Yes.
and then we may have to respond to that. What you're saying in the immediate reaction, you don't see any major difference, but in medium to long term, people will need to start to think about that.
Yes.
Thank you very much for that. I'll come back to you later, because some of the points you raised are really interesting. Robin Greenleaf, Robin, thank you very much for joining us. I know that you've had some where you are, and we cannot see you physically, but you are joining us by telephone. I'm going to try and put the question across to you very quickly. Would you be kind enough to briefly introduce your company? And then I'll go a couple of questions for you. Robin, if you're still with us. Robin.
Thank you, Nelson. I apologize to everyone. We're still having a big windstorm here in the Boston area, and I lost power in my house late last night. So fortunately, the sun is up and I can turn my flashlight off. So I'm CEO of Architectural Engineers in Boston, Massachusetts. We're solely a mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and fire protection design firm, and we focus on building systems. We also do a lot of work in the public transit realm. I'm currently serving as chair-elect of ACEC, and I'm really pleased to be with you this morning or this afternoon.
Well, thank you very much, Robin. I'm looking forward to working with you as become the chair in a couple of years or maybe next year's time. And I'm sure that my good lady, my good friend Linda will be delighted to work with you. The subject I have is about building better. A lot of people talked about in a typical building where the cost of the system is about 30 or 40%, and everything else goes about 60%. I mean, what I'm hearing in the new normal, the question is, has that embraced technology across the boundary? Because people are now working across different boundary. And where do you think this will leave the interstate, and international project? I know you're based in the United States, but even states is a continent by itself. And interstate is like going from one country to another country. So if I put it to you, do you see the impact of COVID changing the landscape in the way your particular business, is evolving?
Yeah, it has to. And it's been very interesting listening to the threads of the previous speakers so far. Being in the United States, COVID forced a lot of travel restrictions, even within state to state, and across the world, it was the same way. I think that early on, we adapted very quickly to the loss of travel. We're holding Zoom meetings in my firm probably 5 times a week just for coordination and whatnot. But the other thing that I'm hearing over and over again is with our clients, and especially in the public sector procurements that we're seeing, that they're leaning towards selecting local firms still. And the reason for that is that we have familiarity with local codes, and they want to see local firms receiving the work. And the other issue that we get into is once the project's reaching construction, someone's got to be near the site. But having said that, the flip side to it is that it really doesn't matter right now where the actual design is happening. And that's been something that has been very tricky to try to impart to our clients. The coordination of the work and the collaboration across the team can happen virtually anywhere. And but the other thing that I'm hearing is we had kind of the first year of the pandemic where everybody buckled down, we learned how to do our work. And after about 4 or 5 months, we realized this is going on way longer than we thought it would. Now we're starting to emerge out the other side. And I am hearing conversations both within my office and with my colleagues that people are looking forward to going back to the office. So I think that there's no clear answer to the question of crossing boundaries. I think some degree of our work is always going to be local, but I think there's a huge opportunity to really expand how it is that we're doing our work before we get to construction.
Thanks very much for that, Robin. I mean, that's good an insight. The other question I was going to put across to you, because I know you said you focus on the architecture and engineering and building services. Do you think we're going digital enough in our sector? I mean, as the COVID forced us, as Stephen said earlier on, that, before we have to think twice and we plan, but now we're forced to use the system that's available to us. We need to be agile. Do you think as an industry, and particularly from your sector, that we're going digital enough in what we do, in the way we do the design, the development, engagement with the clients, and running with the project, be it in office or actually outside the office?
Yeah, well, when we went remote last March, we realized we were building the equivalent of home offices for every one of our employees. And I think that we embraced the idea of using as much digital technology as we could, but there's certain realities to it as well. And I think that some of the lessons learned coming out of that is that it's not one shoe fits all. It's really, I'm lucky. I live in a house where I could call Comcast and increase my bandwidth to 2 gigabytes. And then my daughter and her husband moved in with us for 4 or 5 months. And we had a lot of strain on our system here. We've got families that have kids at home that are on Zoom meetings all day long for remote learning. And so learning to adapt the digital technology with all of our staff was a bit challenging because no one person had the same needs. And so I think that the idea of embracing digital technology is great. I think that we've all learned a lot of lessons about the implementation of it and what that looks like.
Thank you very much, Robin. I'll come back to you later on because I've got one question which I want to put across to you later on. But can I invite Mark Coates, to come on board? Mark, you're from Bentley System. I think you're well known. A quick introduction to your role within Bentley, and then I've got a few questions so that I can actually complete the run. So, Mark, are you with me? Do we still have you?
Hi, Nelson. How are you?
Thank you very much.
My role at Bentley, I'm the Director of Strategic Industry Engagement, where my key role is to sort of decrease the gap between technology and usage of product inside the construction market. As you know, Bentley Systems is a leading global provider of software solutions to architects and engineers, and we provide innovative solutions to advance the world's infrastructure by a number of clients that are on the call today.
Well, I'm sure that most of the people listening to you probably know exactly who Bentley System is. The question I was going to put across to you: do you think the COVID-19 has now really put us on the pressure point where the concept of value for money is something that become a real reality using technology? I mean, is that something that you think the COVID has forced us to do, or is something that was actually unavoidable?
Well, I mean, the last 12, 14 months, I think, if anything, it's taught us that digital adoption has and will continue to play a part in designing, delivering, and maintaining assets. With regards to value for money, I do think the key three stages of delivering a project: design, delivery, and maintenance. Technology is essential not only now but in the long term, especially if we, the UK, and our global community are going to reduce carbon reduction and take that seriously, as Mike said earlier. I think what has happened is we were on the path, we were on the road, we were moving forward, but it has just been accelerated the right way through. As I said, technology does have the ability to help throughout the whole of an asset lifespan. From design, from class reduction to sharpening design, to reducing material waste and errors on site, to 4D planning. I mean, we've got products like Synchro that are being used on a number of projects actually to work out how deliveries are done, to reduce double handling and therefore help with social distancing. And of course, the asset management side, going back to Mike's comment of carbon reduction, that's going to be a key player. And I think the driver there and the influence is going to come from the expanding ESG market. The one thing I would say, the approach that all my colleagues have said so far is it's a team game, and we can't have the data siloed. We have to make the data accessible, and with advances in Wi-Fi and 5G being rolled out, and systems also working online and offline, there is now the ability to access a lot more data a lot easier. And I personally believe that the direction needs to come from the client. There was a paper written by the Chartered Institute of Engineers late last year about a systems delivery approach, and that really puts the onus on the client to clearly define the user outcomes that engineers and technology developers can provide an answer to it. They should give direction and functionality, and also they should define a clear vital data delivery for service. So when the project is come out of the design and construction period, there's a strong handover that it can go into that asset life period, and it makes things sort of work a lot more smoothly. So when you do bolt on new ways of working, like off-site construction, it bolts on very easily because it knows where it fits inside the program. And going back to the comment, we were on that journey. I mean, if you look at, 12 months ago, I used to use it all the time, the Bank Monument railway station that's next door to our office. That project had 425 individual users from 30 different organizations, which actually shows that we can collaborate. We're just now collaborating in a different way.
Mark, I get that because I do know the bank project you talk about is an underground, which is in London, and I actually sit on the board of that board. The interesting question I was going to put across to you is, you talked about the three parts: the design, the delivery, and the maintenance side. And one of the key points that's been talked about is about digital twins. And I know this is a subject that has been going on, and I know Bentley's been banging on, if I can use that word. And now that you have to look at it, not only in the CapEx, but also in the OpEx, and looking at the whole life cost of the issue. Is it something now as a result of COVID that we shine the light that we can't avoid, dealing with that and taking on board that responsibility from the client point of view? How do we address that?
I mean, you know, COVID, you're going back, and digital twins. I mean, digital twins are, I mean, you think 3-4 years ago when BIM came about, digital twins weren't sort of as much spoken about as they are today. As Stephen said earlier, you know, we are now using a lot more data, the acceptance. I mean, the one thing that I've heard about over the last 12 months is the number of times either Teams, Zoom have been rolled out. They were planned to be rolled out already, but they were planned to be rolled out over a 12-month period. They were rolled out over an 8-week period, and that acceleration because of desire and need was there. And as Stephen said earlier, it's going to happen. Whether you're prepared for it or not, it's happening. So people got on board. And I think that's the same with digital twins. And I think I read yesterday in the Financial Times that they'd asked 20 companies, and most of them said they anticipated to work a hybrid model. And this hybrid model will have a major impact on digital twins. So the use of a digital twin, that, you know, to use Mike's colleague Mark Enz's comment of a system of systems, this will give, you know, the empowerment back to clients to make educated decisions using both company asset information, industry information, and asset owners can then reduce their liability, enhance performance, both for themselves, their investors, and their staff stroke users. So what COVID has done is now given us the ability to face a whole new set of data because of this new way of working. And this is where the digital twin sits in very nicely and is that foundation to actually drive us forward into that next digital revolution.
Thanks very much, Mark. I really appreciate that. I'm going to bring Alan on board now. Alan McMurray, who is actually joining us from Australia. Alan comes from a sort of different background, and actually, I'm really pleased that FIDIC just signed an agreement with Alan to support in his venture. So, Alan, can you give us your perspective, who you are, who you work for, and perhaps your perspective as to on this subject? Then I've got a couple of questions to you, Alan.
Thanks. Absolutely. Well, what I might actually start was, so my company's iContract Technology, who are really the commercial entity of my PhD research project at the University of New South Wales. So that's where we're seeking to develop and validate the iContract concept in preparation for a market launch. So I'll just quickly and briefly go over what the intelligent contract or the iContract actually is. So this is a digital contract that is the sole purpose of managing itself. It's a digital contract platform that would execute the terms of the contract between all contracted parties in a coded manner and allow the digital transactions information such as performance criteria and the physical existence of materials on site or works complete to verify payment throughout the supply chain once parameters are met. So we're about 3 years into developing this and looking to actually have a proof of concept developed by the end of this year.
Well, let me put it this way to you, Alan. I'm really pleased that you gave us that story. I'm delighted on behalf of FIDIC to welcome you on board and would like to work with you as to you unpack your PhD program. Now, looking through the Navy and saying, okay, a few years down the line, of course, you come from construction industry. You are actually active in construction industry. You haven't mentioned that. But the interesting is that how do you see the output of what you are doing your PhD program on will impact our industry, particularly looking at the effective project delivery, which is critical. One of the things that Bill talked about is that we may need to find a way to deliver things quicker and more efficient, but it's not actually sometimes design, but also in the management of the process and the procurement process and the interaction between various stakeholders. So how do you think your research may help us to fast track that and give us a better delivery system? Alan?
Yeah, sure. Look, 2 words really. I mean, it's digital efficiency, and it's what we're all here to talk about. Like Mark was just suggesting there, the digital twin industry really has taken off in leaps and bounds over the last year or two. The construction technology itself, the landscape has just grown massively as it catches up really to other industries. We're all familiar with the chart that has the construction industry right down to the bottom behind other industries in terms of digitalization, but we're rapidly catching up. Well, I wouldn't say catching up, but we're rapidly making inroads in that. And really, during the heart of the construction project remains the construction contract, while we're having these many sources of fantastic data from all these other digital twins and other sources of data that are becoming available. We're still hitting this roadblock of the manual kind of nature, from the formation to the administration of contracts, and the inevitable dispute resolution or project closeout that happens with these. So the iContract concept could really, it could bring automation to the contract formulation and negotiation process, where you've got a much more reduced expenditure of resources needed for formation, and also alleviating that ambiguous nature of current contract and drafting, purely down to the logical nature of iContracts, which is also a barrier that can be spoken about at a later date. The contract administration itself, like you said, during the delivery process, the iContract solution could alleviate, the onerous nature of contract administration tasks through, automation of specific, workflows, etc. That's seen in other technologies, but would really bring it down to the heart and the having the contract engine behind that, allowing for greater speed and accuracy of processing, which would obviously divert the efforts of management to actually project delivery, as opposed to a lot of contract admin going on.
If I put it through to you and I said, okay, boy, it seems to me that what you're saying, automation and data processing help. But one of the points that is being said about, issues about the relationship between all the parties, do you feel in the rollout of such a program that the COVID-19 and the need for us to work new normal, do you foresee that will give you a very better reception for industry to take it? And how would you go through the deployment process of that to help us to move into the new normal, where client wants us to work quicker, collaborative, and actually have less disruption? How do you think that can be, put into deployment?
Yeah. Well, like we've been saying as well, the fact that we've been forced into this new world, a new way of thinking, and had to really hasten our acceptance of technologies. That originally my line of thinking with the iContract implementation would have been along the same lines as BIM in terms of an incremental process. So you'd be taking, a very much a semi-automated stance, a phased approach would be the kind of likely roadmap. Identifying the process that would achieve the greatest kind of cost, quality, time saving, that sort of thing, and while maintaining an element of human control. But I mean, to be honest, the way things have gone with society, and how organizations have been showing their agility as well, there may be a case that we would get to that fully autonomous way of contracting practices a lot quicker than possibly expected, and that would be good for me, I think.
Well, put it this way, Tricia, Alan, I mean, all the punchline for me, because I'm trying to complete the question of 3 questions now. I've done two questions. The third one to you. Obviously, there's the big issue in the industry that there's no profit and there's no money in our industry. Do you think, by going into this automation process and bringing people together under the collaborative contract or iContract, will that help us to reduce waste and actually increase the profitability in the industry? What's your take?
Well, I think the going through to a digital process, it essentially starts trimming the fat immediately. We've got you've got a far more efficient stability and stability of payment process, for instance, which is a huge problem in our industry. You've got increased traceability and accountability for people. I mean, I'd put it to you this way. What this software platform would do is nothing that a good manual contract wouldn't do. You take any number of the FIDIC contracts, if they are followed to the letter, that we'd all be working very collaboratively. We'd have very little dispute. What the point of this really would be is to take it out of the women and the men's hands. You know, it's to take it away from the human and to really force that the collaborative nature that we've sought for decades, really.
Okay, thanks very much for that. I'm going to go back to Mike now. Mike, we cover quite a lot at the beginning. One of the questions that I want to ask you is that Mott MacDonald is really an employee-owned entity. Do you think that that makes the transaction management during this new normal, would that be much easier because of the way your ownership structure? Is that an advantage or disadvantage? Mike, what's your take?
Thanks, Nelson.
Yeah.
Thanks, Nelson. Yeah, so as Nelson said, so we're an employee-owned business. So does that make a difference? I do think that it does. I think by having the ownership structure that we have, it allows us to be a very kind of purpose-driven business. So our purpose is all about making a difference. It's all about using infrastructure to improve the lives of those that live with that infrastructure, and it's a purpose that's driven by, yes, our clients, of course, but it's driven by our employees. So the fact that we became carbon neutral, for example, last year, it wasn't just for business reasons. It was because that's what our employees wanted, and our employee ownership model allows us to get that balance right in a slightly different way between what our employees want and simply bottom line profit and return to shareholders, because the shareholders are our employees. I think, and that balance is going to be an interesting thing going forward, because I think if we do want to embrace the sort of changes that we've talked about, the sort of new norm, in terms of the landscape that we operate in, whether it's decarbonisation or social value or whatever, there will be a trade-off. There will be a trade-off between pure bottom line profit and belief in these things. I think the other thing that we do need to grapple with, and this is probably going off at a bit of a tangent, Nelson, so forgive me, but in an employee-owned organization, we have a great deal of consistency of direction. So we don't have, for example, a 3-year CEO kind of cycle where you can have a radical shift, if you like, in direction every few years. The same thing in terms of political cycle. Those cycles worry me in terms of adapting to a new change, a new norm. I kind of mentioned before things around the transactional interfaces. If we're really going to be able to use data and information, digital technology to drive the sort of improvements in delivery of infrastructure, asset management, and so on, we have to break down some of the transactional interfaces between designers, contractors, owners, operators, and so on. We need to break down the issues around availability and accessibility of data and information. And to do that, there's quite a lot of institutional thinking that we have to do, policy thinking that we have to do, that isn't necessarily easy in a normal kind of political cycle. So I don't have an answer there, but again, when you start thinking about COP26 and the sort of things we might grapple with at COP26, I think that's really one of them, that there are some barriers in our way as we try and adapt to this new norm. In terms of the landscape, there are some barriers that we need to remove.
Thanks very much, Mike. I think what you're saying to me is that it does have an advantage to be employee-owned because you are not caught by the cycle of CEO, giving an agenda, but again, you still have to deliver. Can I come back to Pierre Vivacé? One question I was going to put to you, Pierre, is you work across different time zones and different geographical boundary. And do you feel there's been a geopolitical challenges as you start to work in different countries because of this new norm? I mean, do you have the experience of, government actually restricting the way you operate, or the basis of it? One of the points that was raised earlier was that some clients now accept the fact that you don't physically have to be in the country. And I do know some country where the client says you must be, and your senior executive must be. So Piers, do you feel you can see a positive, attitude change in the way some clients are reacting? Piers, where are you?
Yes, I'm here.
Yes, thank you.
To make it simple, yes, this is maybe the only positive effect of this crisis. Since many years, we were claiming, saying, but you cannot force us to have all our experts in your office because there is a timesheet and every day you want to check if they are truly working for you. Today, thanks to the COVID crisis, they have been forced to do it differently because we just cannot send the experts.
So there's a reality done. There's a reality done on some of the clients, which
they made a major step in the way they are managing the project because they are forced to accept, yes, it can work differently. It can work with remote team. And there is other project where I am proposing a production scheme, including France, UK, Brazil, Poland, and it's far more easily accepted because people know that we cannot move anybody. So, because we are still not in the new life, we are still waiting for vaccine, treatment, authorization to travel, so passport, specific passport. So today we are still in this life where they are accepting the new model is, yes, we can work remotely, and by construction, we need to work remotely. How do we have the appropriate FIDIC contract for that? Maybe there is a challenge because we have to find other way to pay, to check if the job is done, to check if everybody is working for the client or not, and it's moving from timesheet to other things. So we don't know how to manage that, but it's a positive effect. We have been forced to change.
Okay, thanks very much. I'm going to start taking questions from the floor. I'm mindful that we do have roughly about 20, 25 minutes left. And I just wondered if there's any question. I'm going to ask Andy for a question from the floor. There's quite a number of questions that I'll probably pick one or two. I'm reading this question. It's coming from Kaji Ahmed. And this is a question to the panelists. And it's a question from Kaji to Robin. I think this is to Robin direct. So I hope you are still with us, Robin, able to pick up that question. So COVID-19.
I am.
Yes, COVID-19 actually opened up new avenues of work in project implementation in the infra sector with robotic workforce, drone survey, monitoring helicopter based on installation, whatnot. Do you agree and really believe in it? Do you think this is sustainable? Has it helped us? Robin?
So this is a hard question for me to answer because so much of this would be a really great question. If one of our panelists is involved with drones and robotics, my firm is not, so I don't want to profess to be an expert with this.
Right. Okay, thanks.
So Nelson, do you want to see if someone wants to take this?
Thanks, Robin. Kind of, Mike, you got footprint around the world. And all these ideas, I know that Mark Enzo and your team, they're looking into the bigger world. Do you think this is something that we now need to unavoidably have to build on into the way we do?
I mean, there's no doubt that this was happening anyway. I think as other panelists have said, this is happening anyway, but there's an acceleration. So I think, carrying out surveys, for example, of existing infrastructure using drones, absolutely. It was already accelerating. Now it's going even faster. I think in terms of robotics, particularly robotics and in the construction world, build off site and so on, I think the whole need for social distancing on construction sites has been interesting because it's made people think differently about how you construct. And part of that is about, I think someone earlier was talking about, using visualization of construction process to reduce double handling and things like that, to reduce that social contact, to maximize the stuff that's being done off site. All of that during the last 12 months has affected productivity. It's had a negative effect on productivity, but it's introduced things that once we get much more attuned to using those techniques, it will actually, I think, lead to safer, faster, higher quality construction. So I think these things are definitely here to stay.
Right. Thanks very much, Mike. The question that I'm going to pick is from Jeff French, past president of FIDIC. I need to bow down, past president. Thank you very much, Jeff, for joining us. Adapting quickly is important, but some of the infrastructure that will be required will take many years to plan, design, and build. How do we resolve this mismatch? Pierre, is it? Can you pick that question up? I think, I'll actually ask Piers and Mark to pick that up. Piers, you want to go first?
Yes, this is a reality. That's why the new normal will not pop up immediately. I would say it's a slight adaptation of the world, and the infrastructures, it will take years to adapt to this new demand, because before deciding, oh, we need new connection with smaller cities, and this is the plan, and 10 years after, we are still seeking for the money, but we have the habit. There is a project, they are waiting for 30 years before being financed. So it will take time, yes. It's an opportunity for us. We'll sell many surveys before.
Thank you. Mark, did you have any view on that?
Yeah, as I said earlier, it's very much down to that client taking the consultant on board with a long-term view on that long-term aspect of the project. And I know, some of the work both Pierre and Mike have done on HS2 has had that long-term digital twin, digital mindset. So if you can get a good client who sets that clearly defined user outcome and relays that to the engineer and delivery partner, you are actually able to enhance the project as it moves down the line by new methods of working and new ways of working. So things, as you said, with construction, where other industries have been massively affected by COVID, construction hasn't, because we've been agile, able to adapt and able to carry on, and therefore has led to a less of a peak and trough situation for us compared to others.
Thank you very much. Stephen Prox, can I have your attention? The question I was going to put across to you is about example of sector. And I'm not quite sure whether we fully addressed that earlier on. A lot of sector have seen massive shift, retail, massive shift in the way they're actually delivering. And you only need to go through most high street, you see that change. You talked earlier on about, yes, if you are a transport provider, you are an airliner, instead of carrying people, how quick are you and agile to move from carrying people to cargo? And this coming to the agility that you talked about. The question I was going to put across to you, is there a particular sector that we can learn from in the industry there that will actually help to shape how things are going to move in the future? So Stephen, are you there?
I would say, again, it's not about as much sectors as specific organizations. So look for those organizations that were able to adapt quickly. And so, how do you adapt quickly? This is a point that both Mike and Mark made. Use the data. But the point is not yesterday's data, because yesterday's data is the old normal, and now we're in the new normal. So we need to use today's data. We need to use advanced algorithms for machine learning and AI, and you need to have data at a detailed level, subatomic level. Averages are your enemy, right? Because averages hide the reality of what's going on. So you really need detailed data. And as Mike said, you need to be able to integrate the data from across multiple sources. And so that future of smart buildings and smart roads and IoT enabled, Internet of Things enabled technology, feeding that data to drive decision making will be absolutely critical. And that really goes across almost all industries. Of course, some will be impacted more than others, but think of it not in terms of industries, but as individual players within each industry.
Thank you. It's about individual company and individual way of reacting. Can I come back into Robin? Robin, you are chair-elect for ACEC in America. And one of the questions I was going to put across to you, the challenge we've always had as an industry is to help to educate the client as much as to deliver, but also we advocate that we want to be trusted advisor. Most of the time, the client have a prescriptive mind of what they want to achieve. Do you think as an industry advocate that we are doing enough? And if we are not doing enough, what else can we do to help to educate the client to be quicker in the way they have to respond to these changes? Robin?
Yeah, it's a great question, Nelson. I think that we have made some great inroads. One of the things that I've seen in the past year with ACEC in the United States is that we've been very quick to respond to the needs of our members, and it kind of starts there. So keeping our pulse on how our members are doing is key. The other thing that's been happening is many of us have been contacted by our public sector clients wanting help. You know, they recognize that the engineering industry, for those of us who have been able to really pivot in this environment, that they can learn from us. And so many of us have set up strategic relationships with our clients to help them learn about technology, learn about how to speed up procurement, learn about delivery on construction. And it's actually been a great shift to be able to be helpful in that way.
Thanks very much for that, Robin. I've got a question for you, Alan. This is coming along the contract sector and it's from Rene Santos. So do you believe that lack of long-term program for contract management within an organization is a significant contributor to development of good contract managers? I mean, I suspect from your point of view, good planning or lack of it, is that, you know, the reason for not having a good contract manager or contract processes? What's your take on that, Alan?
Oh yeah, well look, in terms of an I contract being feasible, we originally looked at BIM as being the kind of sole source of truth, but we very quickly realized that it would more than likely rely heavily on a program and work breakdown structure and all the rest of it. So yeah, not having a long-term plan, not having a long-term schedule, and really having the software being able to adapt to the ever-changing program during the project is paramount to success, I believe.
Thank you very much. We've got a question across now to Mark, and this is to do with digital twin. The question is there a limitation of digital twin in terms of supervision work, of construction work? Are there any good tools for monitoring from remote? So Mark, where are you?
Hi, Nelson. I mean, obviously, any technology, any piece of software is only ever as good as the data that's put into it. And that's, you know, as hopefully Alan and Mike and Steve and everybody else in the call will agree, you can have great systems, but if you don't have good quality data, as Simon said, you'll be making decisions on past data. So you can have a digital twin at a level of a project level, and then you can obviously have that holistic and surface. You know, Mark ends as systems of systems, which builds up and moves on. It's getting the foundations right, and that foundations, you know, are good, like connected data environments, 4D synchro systems that help you plan and move everything. You know, the one thing that has sort of stuck in my mind in this whole year, someone said to me, 2020, what a year. Change has never been this fast. More importantly, it will never be this slow again. So what I would definitely suggest to anybody moving forward is get the simple, small steps, as Alan said, right at the beginning, and then expand fast, and then move with it. Don't sort of try and do everything all in one move and become all-encompassing so very quickly.
Thanks very much, Mike. Mike, I've got a question for you. I mean, I hate to use the word that you're allegedly, more seems to be in this digital world. And today, so when I hear the word Mark Enzo, you know, I hear Mark McDonough, that's a brand name. The question I have from the floor, which is really from a guy called Nigel Tank, is that the industry has been slow to adapt to new digital tools, innovation. Most innovation solutions such as BIM Digital can only see benefit in the long term. How can we convince the client to buy into this solution? And how can we justify the cost of building this model to the value it generates? So you've got the experience. And the question I'm going to put across to you, how do we educate? I think go back there. How do we educate the client to understand and to build this solution as part of an embedded solution for the long-term holistic value of the infrastructure? Mike?
Yeah, thanks, Nelson. That's a really good question. Is that I think if you put your mind back to the early days of BIM in our profession, you know, you could have asked the same question. You know, it actually was costing quite a lot of money to train engineers in the use of BIM, the purchase of the software agreements and so on. Yet we quickly, you know, understood as a profession that actually, using kind of digital-based design in the short term, even in the medium term, certainly was going to be cheaper for us. Even if clients didn't want the model and we just sort of cut the model up into 2D drawings, it actually in that sort of short to medium term, it proved to be more efficient. So I do think that, you know, we need to be visionary as a profession, and recognize that sometimes you might not for yourself create an economic benefit, you know, tomorrow, but you can do that quite quickly. I think as we start to move on away from simple 3D, 4D BIM into 7D BIM and then on into digital twins, it does become a different story. And I do think that we need to educate our clients in the true benefits of moving towards a digital twin. There is no doubt that we can create more efficient solutions by and greater value in our solutions by using the digital twins, or indeed 5, 6, 7D BIM. But the way that is paid for, the whole kind of business model of that is confusing to some of our clients, because they don't really understand the nature of a digital twin and what it can really do. They don't understand the benefits that can be delivered by it over a 10, 20-year period. And they have very often procurement regulations that make it quite difficult to start think about purchasing something which effectively would end up having a 10, 20-year subscription in terms of one route that we might go down. So I think, you know, it comes down to your other question to Robin, really. I think we've got a job. Those of us that understand this technology, we've got a job working with our clients, working with industry groups to really help them to understand what the benefits are of the use of this sort of technology, and really helping them to understand that in terms of some of these global challenges that we face, not least of which is the whole kind of journey towards net zero, without using this technology, we don't have any hope of getting to a position where we may as nations be net zero by 2040, 2050, whatever the date we choose. So I think we've got an education thing to do here, but equally, I think as organizations, we need to embrace what we can when we can. And as everyone said, the pace of change, it's never going to be this slow. So as Mark said, it's never going to be this slow, the pace of change. So we need to adopt this stuff ourselves to the best of our ability and work hard. I know we've worked with clients in developing for them digital twins of their infrastructure. And it's hard work, especially the business model side of it, how it's procured and how, you know, we end up getting paid, because this is no longer a world of selling hours of civil engineers or mechanical engineers. It's working. This is moving into a different environment.
Thank you very much, Mike. I mean, I think what you're saying is that the cultural shift that we need in our industry is not only on the supply side, but it's also on the buyer side. And we have a responsibility to do that. We're coming to the hour now where I'm going to go one question, the same question to each of the panelists, and I want you to try and address that as brief as possible so we can finish on time. So the one question that I'm putting across to all of you, and Mike will probably go for last because he's just been speaking. I'm going to start with Stephen Brooks, which is really, what is the key lesson you will be applying in working better in the new normal going forward? What is the key lesson? You know, Stephen, you've told us it's about the company, it's not about sector. What is the key lesson that you want to leave with us? Like I
think the key lesson is do not try to make incremental change and hold on to the old normal. Embrace the chaos and do zero-based transformation as a best practice. So you know, chief digital officer is also chief destruction officer. Destroy the old, embrace the new, and then you go forward and you be one of those rising stars instead of one of the sinking ships.
Thank you. Marcos, you know, your one word, what is the lesson learned in applying to in the new world, new normal? What's the lesson learned?
Listen more and be as flexible as possible, because there's a lot of influences coming into this marketplace now that will be from external sources, whether it be insurance or financial with ESG loans, and obviously moving down to the carbon footprint reduction. So you have to be extremely flexible, but you also have to listen to those sources outside of our own little market.
Thank you very much. Robin, same question to you. What is the one key lesson to be applied in the new working better in the new future? Robin?
My favorite word this year has been pivot. And I think that the other expression I would add in is don't look back unless you have to, because it feels right now like we are being ejected out of a cannon with the speed of change coming at us. And it brings some great opportunities that you just don't want to miss out on.
Thank you very much. Alan, what's your key word, key message, that you want to leave with us?
Yeah, I feel like we're all kind of saying the same thing, but in different words. But I'll steal from Stephen and Robin really, in that I think the ability to be agile and not fear failure, really, because you can't truly be agile and look forward and be, have that startup mentality without, not being afraid to fail and learn that lesson.
Thank you very much, Pierre. What is the key word going into the new future?
I would say be ready, because we have the confirmation black swans, they exist truly.
Be ready. Thank you very much. Mike, what's your key word to finish up with?
I can't beat Pierre on that one, can I? That's brilliant. Keyword pace. We can move quicker than we think as organizations and as an industry.
Thank you very much. I think I've covered everybody. I'm going to bring Bill back into the play. Bill, you've had the conversation so far. We've said the store, we've had from the technologies, we have from the big players. What is your word of encouragement to try and bring us back home? Bill, where are you?
Well, thank you, Nelson. There was just a lot of terrific commentary in the last hour and a half, and I can't thank the speakers and you, Nelson, enough. This has been a terrific webinar, as most of them have been. I really hate to pick out one or two things, but I'm going to do it anyways. I think what Robin said about the trusted advisor and the fact that many more of our clients are asking us for help and assistance and advice during this challenging time. That on top of, I think, a general trend of an appreciation, or more of an appreciation, for what scientists and engineers and technical people can do for the benefit of society. Both of those things, I think, are creating a tremendous opportunity for us to possibly deal more effectively with some of the silos that a number of people mentioned that we all know get really in the way of delivering projects, the right projects, and delivering them cheaper and with much better outcomes. So I hope that comes to fruition. I think the advice I would give is that we just keep that, now that those doors are open, we all find ways to keep those doors open. I think FIDIC has a role in it, ACEC, all the member organizations, but in addition, our firms have that opportunity as well. So once again, thanks. There's a whole bunch of other things people mentioned. We could talk a long time, but thank you very much for a tremendous webinar. Back to you, Nelson.
Thanks very much, Bill. I just want to close out with two votes that cover. First one to vote on is, some say the new normal will be shortly. However, its impact on day-to-day life and the environment has shown a new way. Is this the future to meet SDG? Do we have an opportunity? Time to vote. Yes or no? It's a very simple answer. Is this an opportunity to take an advantage of the new change and the new normal and try and address sustainability development goal? What is the feedback? I think the overwhelming answer should be yes. Obviously, we've had net zero, we've had the issue of building better, and I think it's important that, one take advantage of this new change. I hear the word pivotal. So what's the feedback, Barbara? Do we have any feedback on the survey? Absolutely, that seems to confirm that 92% yes. That's encouraging. Next question I have, can we put the next question on, please? If the consultancy and engineering sector does not adjust to this new normal, we will be able to attract the best talent. This is how do we make sure that we attract, new talent. Our industry is changing. If we do not change, if we do not respond, I will be able to attract talent into our sector. Question? Answer? Do we have feedback on that, Barbara? Wow. 82% is if we don't change, they will not be able to attract. So it tells us something there, whether you are leaders or whether you are a junior person coming into the industry, it seems to me there is lesson to be learned that if we do not, we will not be able to attract the right people to our industry. On this note, I'm actually going to try and wrap up. I did talk about going forward, the committee webinars, the State of the World webinar, and the webinar for COVID-19. This will continue to come through. At this point in time, I really want to thank everybody, all the panelists that's joined us from wherever you are. I do apologize for those that I have to wake up, from different parts of the world, starting off with Australia, Alan and Stephen from I think California, and we've got Robin from Boston, Bill from Boston as well. I think if I've got it right, Mike is actually somewhere up in the north of England, and I also got Mark is coming from Oxford, and who has I missed? Pierre's from France. Thank you very much for all your time and energy in supporting this program. I want to say massive thank you to all my staff who are behind the scene, Barbara, Andy, Chanel, the whole lot of them, and Nadia, who are behind the scene and making sure everything works as best as it can be. It's been a long journey and a long conversation so far. I hope you've all enjoyed it. And thank you very much to all our panelists for supporting us in this particular debate. And I hope that wherever you are, you keep safe and you keep following the public health until you get the vaccination. So take care and God bless you. Thank you. Bye.